My name is Mackenzie Reed, and for 8 long years, my parents treated me as if I'd ceased to exist. No calls pierced the silence, no messages flickered across my screen, not a single word whispered my way. Then, one ordinary morning, my name blazed across the digital pages of Forbes, a beacon in the vast online world. Just a few hours later, my dormant phone sprang to life, buzzing with a message from a ghost my mother. It was the first text in 8 years. Christmas Eve dinner at 6:30. Family only. Important discussion. I read it twice, the words tearing open a wound I thought had scarred over. Important discussion. I knew what that meant. It always meant the same thing. Someone needed something. So I replied, I'll be there. That night, I walked through their front door, carrying the one gift my mother, who had so readily declared me dead 8 years prior, never saw coming. A reckoning. If the story sets your blood on fire, if your own family has ever turned their backs on you simply because you dared to forge your own path, comment with the city you're watching from and hit subscribe right now because the next part is where the real drama unfolds. 8 years ago, almost to the day, I walked out of that same front door, one suitcase clutched in my hand, the November rain lashing down. I was 19, naive, and had just told my father, Anthony Reed, that I was dropping out of Northwestern University, the hallowed halls of academia, to chase a wild dream, to move to California and build a fintech startup. He exploded. He shoved his chair back with such force it crashed to the floor, a violent punctuation mark to his fury. He slammed both hands on the mahogany dining table, the silverware rattling like bones, and shouted loud enough for the whole block to hear. From tonight forward, Mackenzie Reed is dead. To the Reed family, she is dead. Do you all hear me? My mother, Joyce, a woman who lived by appearances, never looked up from her china plate. She just pressed her lips together, a thin, disapproving line, and kept pushing peas around with her fork, a prisoner of propriety. My younger brother, Drake, all of 17 and already permanently attached to his phone, even then, let out a short, mocking laugh and said, good, one less person stealing the Wi-Fi. Aunt Valerie, Dad's younger sister and the true power broker, the real day-to-day boss of Reed & Sons, leaned back in her chair, folded her arms, and delivered the final, exquisitely cruel twist of the knife. Don't come crawling back when that little fantasy of yours blows up in your face. You've just burned every bridge to your inheritance. I stood there, soaked coat half on, heart hammering, waiting for anyone to say, wait, stop. She's still our daughter, our sister, our granddaughter. The room remained silent, save for the relentless drumming of the rain against the windows. Then, I felt a gentle tug on my sleeve. Grandma Ella Laner, my saving grace, pulled me into the hallway, away from the toxic atmosphere of the dining table. She pressed 5 crisp $100 bills into my hand and slipped a small, folded note into my coat pocket. Her phone number scrawled in familiar blue ink. She cupped my face for a second, looked me dead in the eyes, and whispered, go make them eat those words, baby. That was the last sentence anyone in that house said to my face for the next 8 years. I took the red line downtown, the train a metal snake rattling through the city's underbelly, bought the cheapest Amtrak ticket I could find to the Bay Area, and boarded the California Zephyr with nothing but the suitcase, the $500, and a dead phone, a metaphor for my life. 52 hours later, I stepped off the train in Emeryville, California, with a grand total of $41 left in my pocket. The first 12 months were a brutal fight for survival. I bounced between friends of friends' couches, slept in the harsh fluorescent light of laundromats when I wore out my welcome, and worked 3 soul-crushing jobs at once. 5 a.m. to noon, barista, slinging caffeine to the early risers. Noon to 6 p.m. DoorDash on a borrowed bicycle, weaving through the city's chaotic streets. 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. office cleaner in the sterile, silent financial district, scrubbing away the remnants of other people's success. Some weeks, dinner was plain instant noodles and tap water, 3 times a day. I showered at the 24-hour gym with a 7-day free trial, restarting under different email addresses when they caught on. I learned to code from the free library computers, the glowing screens my only companions, because I couldn't afford Wi-Fi. I lived in a cramped, 180-square-foot room with 5 other people for 14 months, sleeping on a stained mattress that smelled faintly of old takeout. When the heat went out in January, I slept in every hoodie I owned, shivering through the long, lonely nights. There were nights I sat on the fire escape at 3 a.m., staring at the glittering city lights, almost ready to buy a one-way ticket home and beg for forgiveness. But every single time, I pulled out Grandma Eleanor's note, tracing the familiar loops of her handwriting, and went back inside to keep coding, to keep fighting. I built the first version of the app on a cracked 2015 MacBook I bought off Craigslist for $200, teaching myself Swift and Python until my eyes burned and my brain ached. I launched it with zero marketing budget and watched the first users trickle in, then hundreds, then thousands. Investors finally started knocking, sensing the potential. Still, I never breathed a word back home. For 8 full years, the only voice from my old life was Grandma Eleanor, calling once a month from a prepaid burner phone she kept hidden in her Bible, a lifeline in the storm. She never asked for money, never lectured, never said, I told you so. She just listened, told me she was proud, and hung up before the minutes ran out. That was it. That was all the family I had left. That morning, I was staring out my window at the shimmering San Francisco Bay, the water reflecting the city's relentless energy, when the Forbes article dropped. I opened the link out of pure, unthinking reflex. My name sat at the very top of the 30 under 30 finance list, emblazoned in thick, bold letters. The piece called me the dropout who built an empire out of spite and code. It stated, plain as day, that the company I started on a broken laptop in a cramped rooming house had just closed its latest round at a valuation of exactly $128 million. I dropped into the supple leather chair, the phone still glowing in my hand, waiting for the wave of triumph I'd imagined for years, the culmination of sweat, sacrifice, and sheer bloody-mindedness. Nothing came. The apartment was dead quiet, except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the distant wail of a foghorn, a mournful sound echoing my own emptiness. There was no one to call, No one to scream to. No one to say, "Look, I did it." 8 years of total silence had made certain of that. Then the screen lit up again. Not a VC, not a reporter, but a number I had deleted and memorized. A ghost from a past I had tried to bury. I read the words once, then twice, then again, until the letters blurred and danced before my eyes. My pulse slowed to a cold, steady thud. I knew that phrase by heart. In Reed family code, important discussion had always meant one thing. Someone needed cash. I stood up and walked to the glass wall overlooking the water. The glittering city a cruel reminder of my isolation. 9 months earlier, Grandma Eleanor had called late at night from her burner. Her voice was soft, almost apologetic, as if she were delivering a death sentence. She told me Reed and Sons had overexpanded, interest rates had spiked, and the banks were done waiting, their patience exhausted. Total debt, $14. $2 million, secured against every store, the house, even Dad's 401k, a nest egg about to be shattered. She didn't ask me to fix it. She never would. She just said, "I thought you deserved to know before it hits the papers." That same night, fueled by a cold, simmering rage, I set up a Delaware LLC, nested it inside 2 more holding companies, and began buying the paper quietly, patiently, one lunch at a time, obscuring my trail like a seasoned spy. By the time the Forbes reporter sat across from me in this very living room, asking about my rags to riches story, I already owned every lien, every note, every default notice. They never suspected the buyer was the daughter they'd buried. I looked down at the city lights shimmering on the water, reflecting back my own steely gaze, and felt something shift inside my chest, cold and final. I opened the airline app and booked the last nonstop flight to Chicago, departing that evening. While the ticket loaded, I dialed the only number I'd never blocked. Grandma Eleanor answered on the first ring, her voice a beacon in the darkness. "It's live," I said, the words clipped and precise. "I saw it an hour ago," she replied, pride cracking through her voice like sunlight through a storm cloud. "You did it, Mackenzie." A beat of silence, thick with unspoken emotions. "Your mother just invited me to Christmas Eve dinner, too. First time in years." I closed my eyes, picturing her, her face etched with the map of a life well lived. "I'm coming." She exhaled slowly, a prayer escaping her lips. "Be careful what you bring through that door, baby girl." "I've been careful for 9 months." I told her, my voice hard as steel. "Tonight I stop." I packed one overnight bag, black dress, heels, and the slim leather folder I kept locked in the safe, the one that held the key to their future. At SFO, I upgraded the rental to a black Mercedes GLE, because I wanted them to see it pull up, to witness the tangible symbol of my success. As the plane banked east over the bay, the glittering city shrinking below, I turned my phone face down and let the last 8 years settle like a stone in my stomach, a solid weight anchoring me to my purpose. We touched down at O'Hare just after sunset, the Chicago sky a bruised purple. I switched off airplane mode. A second text from Mom appeared instantly, as if she'd been hovering, her anticipation palpable. "Can't wait to see you. We have so much to catch up on." I didn't answer. I took the keys to the Mercedes, slid behind the wheel, and pointed it toward the affluent suburbs, the manicured lawns and sprawling estates, the place I once fled with one suitcase and $500 to my name. This time I wasn't running away. This time I was coming home to collect. Christmas Eve, I drove through snow-covered streets into Oakbrook, the air crisp with the promise of a white Christmas. The black Mercedes glided over fresh powder, headlights cutting through swirling flakes, as I turned into the familiar cul-de-sac, the scene of so many childhood Christmases, now a battlefield. The house loomed ahead, a monument to suburban wealth, wrapped in layer upon layer of white LED lights that made it look like a department store window trying to sell the hollow ideal of family. Through the massive front window glowed a 15-foot Fraser fir, drowning in gold and crimson ornaments, exactly the same color scheme they had used every year since I was 12, a testament to their unwavering commitment to appearances. I parked behind Dad's aging Lexus, a subtle sign of their financial troubles, killed the engine, and let the silence ring for a long moment, gathering my strength, preparing for the storm. Then, I stepped out into the biting cold, the crunch of snow under my heels the only sound. Mom flung the door open before I hit the top step, her face tight with forced cheer. Joyce wore the red velvet dress she only brought out for Christmas Eve, a symbol of their carefully constructed facade. Pearls clasped tight around her neck, a form of armor against the truth. She pulled me into a quick, brittle hug that smelled of Chanel No. 5 and thinly veiled nerves. "Mackenzie, you're here," she sang, her voice pitched half an octave higher than normal. Dad appeared right behind her in his holiday blazer, the same one he'd worn for years, a sign of their declining fortunes. His hair was thinner, his belly softer, signs of age and stress creeping in. Anthony offered the classic man pat on the back, 2 firm taps. No real contact. "Long time, huh?" he said, his eyes already sliding past me to the Mercedes gleaming under the streetlight, assessing its value. Drake slouched in from the den, hoodie half-zipped, phone lighting his face a sickly blue. He flicked his gaze up, registered me, gave a lazy chin lift, and went straight back to whatever digital distraction held his attention. Aunt Valerie stood by the roaring fireplace, champagne flute dangling from manicured fingers, black sequins catching every flicker of flame. She ran her eyes over my coat, my boots, lingering on the Hermes Kelly hanging from my arm, as if she were pricing it in her head, calculating my worth. Well, she drawled, her voice dripping with condescension. "Look what the cat dragged in. Nice bag." I opened my mouth to reply, to deliver the first salvo in the coming war, when 2 small, strong arms circled my waist from the side, pulling me close. Grandma Eleanor pressed against me, her familiar scent of lavender soap and vanilla and everything safe washing over me, a grounding force in the swirling chaos. She held on longer than decorum allowed, then pulled back just far enough to whisper against my ear. "You did it, kid. Every damn thing they said you couldn't." My eyes stung for half a second, the dam threatening to break. The foyer turned into a parade of forced cheer. Coats were taken, drinks offered, compliments fired like bullets, each one carefully aimed. Dad steered me through the archway into the living room, narrating updates like a real estate agent trying to close a deal. New hardwood, new chandelier, a massive new 75-inch television mounted where the old family photos used to hang, a symbol of their misplaced priorities. We moved through the ritual, the carefully choreographed dance of a family teetering on the brink. Mom asked about the flight, the weather in California, whether I'd tried the new sourdough place in the Mission. Dad wanted to know if Silicon Valley was still insane and if Tesla stock was really going to the moon. Drake, without looking up from his screen, asked if tech people actually worked or just played ping pong all day. Valerie kept circling, dropping little barbs disguised as jokes, testing my defenses, probing for weakness. Must be nice to have investors throwing money at you, she said, her voice laced with envy. Some girls get all the luck, don't they? I answered politely, smiled on cue, and watched them watch me. Their eyes glinting with a mixture of curiosity, suspicion, and a desperate hope. Every question carried a hidden scale. Every laugh was weighed against how much I might be worth now, how much I could potentially save them. Grandma Ella Laner stayed within arm's reach, a silent guardian, topping off my sparkling water when no one noticed, slipping her hand over mine whenever Valerie's smile turned razor-sharp, a comforting presence in the growing storm. She never asked me a single question in front of them. She already knew every answer. Eventually, Mom clapped her hands together, the sound sharp and brittle in the air. Dinner's ready, she announced, her voice strained. We migrated to the formal dining room, a room reserved for special occasions and carefully crafted illusions. The table could seat 14, but was set for 7, each place setting a masterpiece of gilded excess. Gold-rimmed plates, crystal wine glasses, the same red and gold runners that had been in the family since the 80s, symbols of a bygone era. My place card, calligraphy perfect, sat at the far end, opposite Dad. The same powerless seat I'd been assigned as a teenager, a subtle reminder of my former status. We took our chairs, the plush velvet a stark contrast to the cold, hard reality about to unfold. A hired server appeared with the first course, roasted pear salad with candied walnuts and balsamic reduction arranged like modern art, a fleeting moment of beauty before the reckoning. Conversation stayed safely shallow, skirting around the truth like a hesitant dancer. How pretty the neighborhood looked this year, blanketed in snow. How the snow was perfect for photos for the annual Christmas card. How Aunt Valerie had found the most darling new decorator, a sign of their unwavering commitment to appearances, even as the ship sank beneath their feet. Second course arrived, the familiar scent filling the air with a bittersweet nostalgia. Honey-glazed ham sliced thin, garlic mashed potatoes whipped to clouds, haricot verts with slivered almonds. The exact menu Mom had served every Christmas I could remember, a ritualistic offering to a dying tradition. Valerie held court, complaining about impossible supply chain issues and unfair online competitors killing brick and mortar, the death knell of their empire. Dad nodded solemnly, refilling glasses, making sure everyone stayed loose, the alcohol a lubricant for the impending negotiation. By the time the plates were whisked away, the performance was polished to a dangerous shine. The veneer of normalcy stretched thin over a gaping chasm of debt and desperation. They laughed a little too hard at each other's jokes, passed the rolls a little too often, made sure I felt welcomed, missed, almost loved, a calculated attempt to manipulate my emotions. I folded my napkin, placed it precisely beside my plate, and waited for the curtain to rise on the real reason I was here. When the last slice of ham hit the table, my father set his wine glass down with a hard clink that sliced straight through the fake holiday cheer, shattering the illusion of normalcy. The hired server disappeared, sensing the shift in atmosphere. The soft piano version of "Oh Holy Night," playing in the background, suddenly sounded ridiculous, a discordant note in the impending drama. Dad straightened his shoulders, the weight of the world settling on them, folded his hands like he was about to give a boardroom presentation, and looked straight at me, his eyes finally meeting mine without pretense. Reed and Sons is on the edge of losing everything, he began, his voice low and rehearsed, the words sounding like a eulogy. Aunt Valerie picked up the baton without missing a beat, her voice sharp and accusatory. We got greedy after COVID. Everyone was spending. We opened 4 new locations in 18 months, riding the wave of artificial demand. Then interest rates doubled, supply costs went through the roof, and the online giants crushed foot traffic. The perfect storm. The banks issued final default notices last Thursday, she continued, her voice laced with panic. Miss one more payment and they start seizing stores, inventory, this house, everything. Mom let out a perfectly timed sob, pressing her napkin to the corners of her dry eyes, a practiced performance honed over years of manipulation. 42 years of your grandfather's name, Anthony? She cried, her voice thick with theatrical despair. 42 years of Reed and Sons on those signs, gone in a heartbeat. Drake finally set his phone face down, the gesture laden with dramatic significance, stretched dramatically, and gave the table his best concerned brother face, a hollow imitation of genuine emotion. It's actually pretty straightforward, he said, his tone dismissive. We need $2, $8 million to refinance the worst loans and buy 6 months. After that, we restructure and we're golden. No big deal. For pairs of eyes swiveled to me in perfect synchronization, their collective gaze a weight I could almost feel. Dad leaned forward, his voice softening into the tone he used when he wanted a favor from the country club committee, the honeyed words dripping with insincerity. You've done incredibly well, Mackenzie. We are all so proud of you, he said, the word proud hitting me like acid, burning through the carefully constructed layers of indifference. This company is still your birthright, he continued, his voice resonating with a false sense of entitlement. Your blood built those stores just as much as anyone's. Valerie jumped in, syrupy sweet, her words a carefully crafted trap. We're not asking for charity. You'll get preferred equity, full interest, whatever terms you want. You'd be the hero who saved the family legacy. Mom reached across the table corner, her touch calculated, and tried to cover my hand with hers, A desperate attempt to forge a connection that had been severed long ago. I let her fingers rest there without moving, my face a mask of impassivity. "Please, sweetheart," she whispered, tears now magically appearing, as if on cue. "We've missed you terribly. This could heal everything. We could be a real family again." Drake shrugged, already bored with the charade, his attention drifting back to his digital world. $8 million isn't even real money to you anymore, right? He said, his tone casual, almost dismissive. "Just write the check and we all move on." Grandma Eleanor's hand found mine under the damask tablecloth. Her thin fingers wrapped around my fist, warm, steady, unbreakable, a silent promise of support. She didn't speak. She never had to. I looked slowly around the circle, taking in each face, each carefully constructed persona, each calculated lie. Dad's calculated calm, a facade hiding the desperation beneath. Mom's practiced tears, a weapon she wielded with ruthless efficiency. Valerie's predatory smile, a sign of the shark lurking beneath the surface. Drake's lazy entitlement, a symbol of the rot that had infected their family. 8 years of nothing. 8 years of ignored birthdays, unacknowledged achievements, no visits when I was sick, no congratulations when I closed rounds, no calls when my name trended on TechCrunch. 8 years of being dead to them. And now, the very day Forbes crowned me, I was suddenly sweetheart again. Suddenly, legacy mattered. Suddenly, blood was thick enough to demand millions. Dad tried one last push, his voice dropping into the old commanding register that used to make me flinch, a relic from a time when I was still under his control. "We'll put you on the board," he said, his words measured and deliberate. "Voting shares, full partnership, whatever you need to feel comfortable. Just help us keep the doors open." Valerie nodded eagerly, her eyes glinting with avarice. "My attorney can have papers ready by morning. You'd own a real piece of the company, not just some app." Mom squeezed my hand harder, her nails digging in just a little, a subtle act of aggression. "This could fix everything, honey," she pleaded, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. "All the hurt, all of us together again like it should be." I gently slid my hand out from under hers, picked up my water glass, and took a slow, deliberate sip, savoring the coolness of the liquid as it slid down my throat. The entire table held its breath, their collective fate hanging in the balance. Grandma Eleanor's grip tightened, a silent green light, signaling her unwavering support. I set the glass down with a soft click, the sound echoing in the tense silence, and finally spoke, my voice calm and controlled, betraying none of the emotions churning inside me. 8 million. I repeated, letting the number hang in the air, a challenge and a promise. That's what it takes to keep the lights on. Dad's shoulders relaxed a fraction, relief already flickering in his eyes, the trap about to spring shut. I allowed myself the smallest, coldest smile, a predator about to pounce. "Interesting timing," I said, the words dripping with irony. The room temperature seemed to plummet, a palpable shift in the atmosphere. Every face froze exactly where it was, their expressions a mixture of confusion, fear, and a dawning realization. I laid my fork down, the clatter unnaturally loud in the silence, looked at Grandma once, a silent acknowledgement of her presence, and pressed a single button on my phone, the culmination of months of planning, the final move in a complex game of chess. The front door opened with a violent rush of Arctic wind that made every candle flame bow and flicker, casting dancing shadows across the room. Snow exploded into the foyer in a white cloud, a visual representation of the storm about to engulf them. Heavy, deliberate footsteps crossed the marble floor without hesitation, each step a thunderclap of impending doom. Sawyer Brooks, my lead counsel and the architect of my revenge, stepped into the dining room, carrying a brushed aluminum briefcase still dusted with fresh powder, a symbol of his unwavering professionalism. His charcoal overcoat carried the sharp bite of winter, a stark contrast to the stifling warmth of the room. He walked straight to the table, his gaze unwavering, set the case dead center on the ruined Christmas tablecloth, right between the crystal candelabra and the half-eaten ham, and snapped the locks open with 2 crisp, metallic clicks, the sound echoing like gunshots in the strained silence. "Good evening," he said, his voice cold and perfectly even, betraying no emotion. "My name is Sawyer Brooks. I am lead counsel to Mackenzie Reed." Dad shot halfway out of his chair, his face contorted with rage and disbelief. "Who the hell let you in my house?" he roared, his voice trembling with fury. Sawyer didn't even glance at him, dismissing his outburst with a subtle shift of his gaze. He simply began removing thick document packets from the briefcase, lining them up like weapons on a rack, each one a nail in their coffin. 9 months ago, he began, his voice calm and methodical. Ms. Reed began purchasing every dollar of Reed and Sons' outstanding indebtedness. $2 million across 7 separate credit facilities was purchased and assigned to a Delaware limited liability company. He paused, letting the information sink in, the impact of his words reverberating through the room. "That company is 100% owned and controlled by Mackenzie Reed." He slid the first packet forward, the cover sheet screaming assignment of notes and security interests, in bold black type, a stark declaration of war. Valerie lunged and snatched it, her eyes scanning the document with frantic speed, her face paling as she absorbed the implications. "This is impossible," she screamed, her voice cracking with disbelief. "We would have been notified. You were—" Sawyer cut in, his voice flat and unwavering, brooking no argument. He produced a second packet, the evidence irrefutable. Certified mail return receipts to corporate counsel, recorded UCC 3 financing statement amendments filed with the Illinois Secretary of State, lender consent forms executed March through August. Every single notice acknowledged and filed. He continued, unstoppable, his words a relentless barrage of legal jargon, each phrase a carefully placed blow. Third packet. Original promissory notes, each now bearing a fresh all-long that read, "Pay TO the order of Reed Acquisitions LLC, without recourse." The finality of the statement hanging heavy in the air. Fourth packet. Recorded mortgages on all 11 retail stores, the distribution warehouse, and this private residence, their beloved home. Every deed of trust listing the same new creditor. Reed Acquisitions LLC, the name now synonymous with their doom. Fifth packet. Personal guarantees executed by Anthony Reed, Joyce Reed, and Valerie Reed, each now payable exclusively to the Delaware entity. Their personal wealth now forfeit. Mom's wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered against the floor. The sound of violent punctuation marked to the unfolding disaster. Red wine bled across the white carpet like a fresh wound, a symbol of the irreparable damage that had been done. Drake finally looked up from his phone, his mouth hanging open, his eyes wide with disbelief. You bought our debt? He stammered, the realization dawning on him with horrifying clarity. Sawyer turned another page, his expression impassive. Ms. Reed purchased 100% of it, he confirmed, his voice devoid of emotion. Every lien, every default clause, every remedy. The fate of Reed and Sons rests entirely in her hands. Dad's face turned purple, his veins bulging at his temples, his rage threatening to erupt. He slammed both palms on the table so hard the plates jumped and silverware flew, a primal display of fury. This is blackmail, he roared, his voice shaking with uncontrollable rage. No, sir, Sawyer replied, his tone almost kindly, a masterclass in controlled condescension. Blackmail is a crime. This is ownership. He opened the final folder, the single sheet of paper within a death warrant. Notice of default and acceleration of indebtedness. The words screamed in bold, black letters. As of 6:52 p.m. This evening, Reed & Sons is in material default on all facilities. The entire $14,200,000 is now immediately due and payable. Foreclosure sales on all collateral can be scheduled as early as tomorrow morning. Mom's eyes rolled back, her carefully constructed facade crumbling under the weight of the truth. She slid sideways out of her chair, completely limp, a broken doll discarded on the floor. Drake dropped to his knees and caught her just before her head hit the floor, cradling her in his arms while staring at me in horror, his face a mask of disbelief and fear. Valerie shot to her feet, her chair scraping violently against the floor, her composure shattered. You planned this? She screamed, her voice cracking into something feral, a primal scream of rage and betrayal. You set us up, you evil bitch. Dad was shaking with rage, his body trembling, his face a mask of fury. You will not destroy this family, he roared, his voice a thunderous threat. Not tonight, not ever. Grandma Eleanor's fingers tightened around mine under the table, warm, steady, unbreakable, a silent reassurance in the midst of the chaos. Sawyer closed the briefcase with a soft, final click, the sound echoing in the deathly silence, and stepped back, his work complete. The room froze, the scene a tableau of despair and shattered illusions. The only sounds were Mom's shallow breathing on the floor and the wind howling outside, a mournful lament for a family on the brink of destruction. I let the silence stretch, amplifying the tension until it became unbearable, a suffocating weight pressing down on them. Then, I spoke, my voice low, calm, and perfectly clear, cutting through the chaos like a knife. Now you know who holds the future of Reed & Sons. I said, my words a statement of fact, a declaration of power. My father slammed the table so hard the plates jumped and the crystal water glasses toppled in a chain reaction, a visual representation of the collapse of their world. One rolled off the edge and exploded on the hardwood, the sound echoing through the room. Mom was still half slumped on the floor, Drake cradling her shoulders, his face a mixture of horror and disbelief. Valerie was screaming something about lawsuits and police, empty threats born of desperation. The chandelier above us trembled, swaying precariously, as if it might come crashing down, a fitting end to the drama unfolding below. I waited until the noise crested and shattered into ragged breathing, until the storm of their emotions subsided into a stunned silence. Then I reached inside my coat, pulled out one final, slim black leather folder, and placed it dead center on the ruined Christmas tablecloth, right on top of Sawyer's closed aluminum case, a final offering, a final choice. Sawyer stepped forward, flipped it open for them, revealing its contents, and stepped back, allowing the weight of the decision to fall upon them. Inside lay a single cashier's check for $350,000 United States dollars, drawn on my personal operating account at First Republic Bank, a tangible symbol of my success, and beneath it, a 15-page agreement titled Full and Final Release of All Claims, Interests and Inheritance Rights in Reed & Sons, ITS subsidiaries, assets and any family trust. The legal jargon a carefully constructed cage, trapping them in their own desperation. I spoke for only the second time that night, my voice perfectly level, devoid of emotion. That check is yours the instant the last signature is witnessed and notarized. I said, my words a cold, calculated offer. In exchange, Anthony, Joyce, Valerie, and Drake Reed permanently and irrevocably release every present and future claim to Reed & Sons, its real estate, inventory, trademarks, bank accounts, and any trust or estate that might ever exist. You walk away tonight with $350,000. I continued, my voice unwavering. Enough for a modest condominium, 2 used cars, and a quiet life somewhere far from Oakbrook. A cruel reminder of their diminished circumstances. You refuse, I concluded, my gaze sweeping across their faces. And the foreclosure sales begin at 9 a.m. Tomorrow morning. Everything goes to the highest bidder. Your decision? I said, the words hanging in the air, the power now firmly in my hands. The room went so quiet I could hear the snow hitting the windows, a soft, whispering sound that amplified the tension. Grandma Eleanor let go of my hand, a silent acknowledgement of my strength, reached across the table, picked up the heavy Mont Blanc pen, turned straight to the witness signature page, and wrote, Eleanor Margaret Reed. In her beautiful old-fashioned cursive, her signature a testament to her unwavering support. Then, she capped the pen, set it down, and gave the table the calmest, most radiant smile I had ever seen on her face. A smile that held a lifetime of wisdom and unwavering love. That smile destroyed them, shattering the last vestiges of their pride and resistance. Valerie grabbed the pen next, her manicured hand shaking so violently the ink bled across the page, a permanent stain on their legacy. Valerie seized the pen, stabbing at the signature line as if Valerian Reed herself were the enemy, each letter transforming into tiny, vicious spikes. She finished with a flourish, then hurled the pen across the table with such force it ricocheted off Dad's china plate. "I hope every dollar burns you," she spat. Drake retrieved the pen after her, his face contorted in a mask of pure, unadulterated rage, tears carving paths down his cheeks. He slashed his name, Drake Anthony Reed, onto the page with angry, jagged strokes, muttering unbelievable and psycho under his breath. A litany of disbelief and resentment that hung heavy in the air. Mom, helped back into her chair by Drake, was a ghost of her former self, her face ashen, mascara streaking in black, melancholic rivers down her pale cheeks. She stared at the cashier's check as if it were a mirage, ready to vanish at any moment. Then her gaze shifted to me, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes, before settling back on the signature line. Her hand trembled like an autumn leaf caught in a relentless wind. Joyce Marie Reed materialized on the page in the same looping cursive she'd once used to sign my elementary school permission slips, a stark contrast to the chaos surrounding it. When she finished, she released the pen, letting it roll away as if it had burned her, and buried her face in her shaking hands, a monument of despair. Dad remained standing, a towering figure looming over the document as if he could bully it into non-existence. His chest rose and fell in furious, ragged bursts, the air whistling through his nostrils with each exhale. The grandfather clock in the hall, a stoic witness to generations of Reed family drama, began to chime 9:30, its measured tones adding to the oppressive tension. He stared at the signature block for what felt like an eternity, a full minute etching itself into the silence, pride and terror battling for dominance across every line of his face. A silent war waged in the harsh light of the dining room. Finally, with a guttural sound of resignation, he snatched the pen. The first stroke was a violent act, ripping the paper with a sickening tear. He pressed harder, slower now, deliberately, until Anthony James Reed was carved into the page in thick, dark lines. The same hand that had once signed my college rejection letters, those missives that urged me to get serious. A cruel irony in this moment. He dropped the pen as if it were a burning ember, a symbol of his relinquished power. Sawyer moved with practiced efficiency, a silent executor of legal necessities. He verified each signature, initialing every page in red ink, a stark contrast to the somber black. He applied his Illinois notary seal and embossed stamp to the final execution page, the sound a sharp punctuation mark in the heavy silence. Then, with a sigh that was almost imperceptible, he slid the original executed set into a fresh manila envelope, its pristine surface a stark contrast to the turmoil it contained, and placed bound certified copies in front of Dad. "The cashier's check is valid and negotiable tonight," he stated, his voice calm and measured, a soothing balm in the room's simmering tension. "The debt has been marked paid and satisfied in full as of 9:32 p.m. All foreclosure proceedings are permanently terminated. You may deposit the funds immediately." He closed everything with a decisive snap, tucked the envelope securely under his arm, and stepped aside, a silent sentinel. The dining room fell silent, the only sounds Mom's broken, hiccuping sobs and the soft tick of cooling wax from the half-melted candles, their flickering flames casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. I rose from my chair, my movements deliberate, my resolve hardened. Grandma Ella Laner stood with me, linking her arm through mine without hesitation, her touch a reassuring anchor in the storm. I looked at each of them one last time, etching the scene into my memory. Dad stared at the table, his shoulders collapsed under the weight of defeat. Valerie's hands were clenched so tight her knuckles were white, a testament to her impotent rage. Drake held Mom, her tears soaking into his worn hoodie, a symbol of his unwavering loyalty. Grandma's grip was warm, proud, unbreakable. I spoke once more, softly, clearly, for the final time that night. "Merry Christmas." Then I turned and walked out of the dining room, Grandma Ella Laner at my side, a silent promise of unwavering support. Sawyer followed 2 steps behind, a guardian and protector, carrying the only thing left of the empire they once swore I would never touch. My name on every line that mattered. I helped Grandma into the Mercedes, the soft leather a comforting contrast to the biting winter air. While snow continued to fall, a silent, ethereal blanket covering the world. Sawyer closed her door gently, then circled to the driver's seat and pulled away from the house without a backward glance, leaving the ghosts of Christmas past behind. The Christmas lights blurred into streaks of red and gold through the rear window, a kaleidoscope of fading memories. Grandma Ella Laner rested her head against the heated leather seat and let out a long, quiet breath, a sigh of relief and perhaps, finally, peace. "You okay?" I asked, my voice soft with concern. She reached over and patted my hand, her touch surprisingly strong. "Better than I've been in 40 years, baby," she said, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. We drove in silence to the small 2-bedroom condo I had bought her 6 months earlier in downtown Hinsdale, a world away from the opulent mansion she had left behind. She had refused anything larger, insisting on simplicity. "I've got too many memories in big houses," she'd said, her voice tinged with a melancholic weariness. "I want peace now." That night, she fell asleep in her recliner before the fireplace, wrapped in the cashmere blanket I had given her, the soft a tangible expression of my love. I kissed her forehead and left Sawyer waiting downstairs, a silent promise to protect her. 6 months later, he passed like a slow exhale, his life fading as gently as a summer breeze. The Oakbrook mansion sold at auction for $4.9 million, barely enough to cover the remaining liens after I released the primary mortgage, a final, decisive act. Dad moved into a 1-bedroom rental in Wheaton, a stark contrast to the sprawling estate he had once commanded. Mom filed for divorce 31 days later, the papers citing irreconcilable differences, a clinical term for the years of accumulated resentment and unspoken pain. She took half the cashier's check and disappeared to a condo in Naples, Florida, severing all ties with the past. leaving no forwarding address. Aunt Valerie's real estate license was suspended after 3 ethics complaints from former vendors, her career crumbling around her. Last I heard, she was selling handbags at a department store in Schaumburg, working commission only, her fall from grace complete. Drake lasted 3 weeks at a car dealership before he was fired for showing up late. His potential squandered. Now he drives for Uber Eats in the same black hoodie he wore that Christmas Eve. The one still faintly stained with mom's mascara. A permanent reminder of that night's unraveling. Reed & Sons became Reed Financial Collective under my full ownership. A phoenix rising from the ashes. I kept 3 flagship stores, rebranded the rest, and turned the company profitable again within 9 months, proving my detractors wrong. The employees who stayed got raises and equity, their loyalty rewarded. The ones who had mocked me years ago found new jobs quickly, their whispers silenced. Grandma Ella Laner never asked for a penny, her trust in me unwavering. She spent her days reading, gardening on her tiny balcony, and calling me every Sunday at exactly 4 o'clock. A ritual that grounded me. Some Sundays she told stories about Grandpa starting the first store with a $5,000 loan in 1981. Tales of humble beginnings and unwavering determination. Some Sundays she just listened to me talk about work, offering quiet support, and said, "I'm proud of you, Mackenzie." Her words a balm to my soul, every single day. The next Christmas Eve arrived soft and quiet, a stark contrast to the previous year's turmoil. Snow fell again, but this time it felt gentle, forgiving, a peaceful embrace. I drove to her condo with a small Fraser fir in the trunk and 2 mugs of homemade cocoa spiked with peppermint schnapps. A simple offering of love and companionship. She greeted me at the door in red plaid pajamas and the fuzzy socks I bought her the year before, her eyes twinkling with anticipation. We decorated the little tree with only 12 ornaments. 1 for each year I had been gone and 1 extra for the year I came back. A symbolic representation of our reunited bond. No hired caterers, no string quartet, just the crackle of the fireplace and Bing Crosby singing low from an old record player. A soundtrack of warmth and nostalgia. She handed me a small wrapped box at midnight, her smile radiant. Inside snorts was the original note she had slipped into my coat pocket 8 years earlier. The one with her phone number in blue ink, now laminated and framed. A testament to her unwavering faith. Real family, she said, tapping the glass. Stays when you have nothing left to give. I felt my eyes burn for the first time in years. The tears a release of pent-up emotions. We sat on the floor in front of the fire, backs against the couch legs, stretched out like we were 20 and 70 again, our age difference fading into insignificance. The tree lights blinked red, green, gold, casting a warm glow on our faces. Outside, the world was white and silent, a blanket of peace. I raised my mug to the only person who never declared me dead, the woman who always saw my potential. She clinked hers against mine, her eyes filled with pride. To the granddaughter who proved every single one of them wrong. We drank, the cocoa sweet and warm, a comforting elixir. The fire popped, sending sparks dancing up the chimney. The snow kept falling, a silent benediction. And for the first time in my entire life, Christmas felt exactly like